Harvesting spring water. This is just to give you some idea about what to do if you want to go harvest spring water. First of all, if you live in the United Kingdom, you are so lucky because we have the Ordnance Survey. A detailed Ordnance Survey map actually marks every single spring that has been noted. And that's certainly one way to find your spring. The other way is to have a good bit of luck, and the other way is just to go off exploring randomly until you are drawn in a certain direction using your intuition. All good methods, but at some point or other you're going to find a source of water like the one I found down there. And then the questions start to rise. Is it safe? And my first answer to that is, well, you do need to be sensible and prudent about this. And the first thing is, if it's a spring, it's coming from under the ground, and that is by definition the safest place to get your water from. If you can see it's been travelling over ground for any distance at all, you need to look at the landscape. For example, are there any fields with grazing in the landscape? Because if so, then you need to be much more wary and cautious, because in that situation there's a possibility of contamination from animal waste, and you wouldn't want that. So the best thing of all is to go for a spring. Here the one that I've got is a spring which is actually filling a reservoir. That's a pretty good obvious source to go for. Occasionally I've had to go for a waterfall, and there I'm looking for something as high up as possible with only wild nature around and no grazing whatsoever. That makes that a safer option too. So then the next thing is it clear? Well, you can see how clear this one is. This has come out absolutely beautifully, and the temperature is a delight and the taste is wonderful. Sometimes when you're harvesting a water you might find it's got a peaty colour to it. That's off-putting visually, doesn't affect the quality, it's absolutely fine. It might be very slightly more acidic, not quite so preferable for the palate, so I like my water to be as clear as I can. And the other thing you might be wondering about is, what about little bits? Well, here we go. The little bits you can't see are the ones you want to be concerned about. There's the ones which are in your tap water, the chlorine, the fluoride, the pesticide residues, the identified chemicals. These are the ones to be wary of. But I'll tell you, the more you get experience of harvesting the water, the more skilled you get. And it's very rare I ever harvest a 5-litre container with bits in these days. That will be completely clean. So that's how to harvest your own spring water. What about river water, you ask? Well, I'll tell you what, it depends on what kind of landscape the river's been travelling through. For example, the river we've just been doing our other shots on water, we would not be drinking from that, although the water looks incredibly clear and incredibly clean, because it's travelling through grazing land. So again, there's a possibility of animal waste ending up in the river. So it all depends on what your choices are. Always go for the best quality you can. Always favour a spring over every other source if you have that opportunity. But sometimes you won't be so lucky, and sometimes it might be a choice of the river or nothing, or the river or something really toxic. And here's the thing that I find: just by keeping my body in good condition, I can sense what a water is like. A little taste and I know whether it's going to be a good one for me or not. So listen to your intuition. If your intuition says, no, I'm not going to touch that one, always obey intuition. If your intuition says, yes, this is right, listen to that too. You could actually, if you wanted to, you could even run this water through a filter. There's nothing to stop you from doing that. I prefer not to do it myself, but you certainly could. Be absolutely fine. A little bit more detail about these filters. We spoke a little bit about the carbon filter in the jug. Then there's more expensive kind of filters you can get. There's one called a reverse osmosis filter. This costs a few £100 sterling, and you have to fit it in line to your water supply, and they last for a very long time without needing to do anything to change them. And they are very good quality. They are highly recommended in an area which is particularly toxic. I would always go for a reverse osmosis filter out of preference if you really do need to go for that extra trouble to get your water extra clean, so you know it's not good. And I'll just speak briefly about Spain. In Spain they actually need to filter the water for the shower there because it's so toxic. So there you go. Amazing the things people have to do to get water which is actually usable for the human body, when before our wonderful human intervention it was perfect and pristine. So there you go. But everything's changing, and we're moving towards a time when our quality of water is going to improve. It is improving in some parts of the world already, but it's good to find out from local people, if you're new to an area, what's going on in the area. Are there any suspicious factories? Is there anything you need to know about? It's good to do your research always. Hard water and soft water. You've heard these terms, but do you know what they mean? Let me explain simply. If your water is running through the rocks, and these rocks happen to be the kind of rocks which are very hard rocks, very strong rocks that don't give away their minerals, then that means to say that the water that's flowing through doesn't pick up any mineral salts. If it picks up no mineral salts because the stones are very hard, guess what? Here's the irony. That's what we call soft water. Soft water is particularly found where you find rocks like granite or serpentine. These are really hard stones, they don't give up any minerals at all. The place where you're going to find hard water is an area where you find there's lots of calcium or limestone. For example, the south coast of England, especially the southeast, is very well known for limestone. Also the Cotswolds in England, lots of limestone. The limestone easily gives up its minerals into the water. The water is very mineralised, and the result is you get water which is hard. Hard water is more likely to be on the alkaline side as well. And there's lots of different opinions about this. Do your own research, but some people reckon it's good to have water with minerals in because then it's extra minerals for your body. The advantage of the soft water is it's wonderful to wash in, and people do sell devices to soften your water which you can put in line into your shower or your bath so you can get soft water for washing your body or washing your clothes. But the general opinion is areas where the water is very, very soft, people can have problems building enough minerals to get their teeth strong enough when they're children. So that's something to be aware of. If you live in a very soft water area, you might want to look at what you can do to increase the amount of minerals going into your body. And of course the very best thing to do is to eat organic vegetables. The mineral content is just right for organic vegetables. But if you're eating more of a chemicalized diet and you've got yourself a very soft water, you might seriously run short of minerals. So that's something to look at too. Hard water, not so much of a problem. To get it to an even finer level of detail, there's something called temporary and permanent hardness of a water. So bearing in mind the hard water is coming from the minerals which come from the rocks that easily lose their minerals, like limestone, sandstone as well I'll mention. Well, then we've got temporary and permanent hardness water. Well, this is what it comes down to. Some water, when you boil it, the hardness goes away, and that's because the mineral salts actually get redissolved, and that actually has an effect on the water and makes it easy to wash in, makes a nicer cup of tea, for example. It's the water that's got permanent hardness that's the one that, particularly my mum, she complains about where she lives. She makes a cup of tea, water's not very nice because the tea tends to be a bit scummy. So this sort of thing can happen depending on whether your hardness of your water is temporary or permanent. And if the water's temporary hardness, you can boil it and that gets rid of the problem. One way to look at water is to see how acid or alkaline the water is. And the point of balance between acid and alkaline, of course, is neutral. And neutral is very desirable, that's pH 7. So anything around pH 7 is really good. If it goes into a little bit into the alkaline up to about pH 8, that's just about tolerable. Above pH 8 and it starts to become too alkaline. And again, you don't want your water any more acid than pH 6, to be honest with you, because that's going to be too acid. Too acid, too alkaline, the body's not going to be happy with it. All your metabolic processes are designed to operate at optimal efficiency around pH 7. So good quality water is usually going to be around the pH 7. In any town or city, you will find that the water supply to a person's house, it depends on exactly where you are as to which water supply you're getting. So you might live in one part of the town and be getting water from a borehole, somewhere else you might be getting it from a reservoir, somewhere else you might be getting it from a spring. And this is all going to make a difference to the quality of the water. So if you ever have the experience you move house not very far away and you suddenly get different symptoms, that'll be the reason. Because water does depend so much as to where it comes from. And of course the ideal thing is for the water to come from a spring. But in these days you have to find out what you can get depending on where you live. As you can see, this once upon a time was a container for bottled water. Now this is my view about bottled water. Almost every single time you get bottled water it's going to come from a good source, but then it's going to sit in the bottle. And it's going to sit in the warehouse, and it's going to sit in the supermarket. It might be sitting around for months before you get to drink it. I personally like to drink my water, ideally within 7 to 14 days of harvesting it. It's got its greatest vitality then, so bottled water is okay if you can't do any better. It's certainly better than drinking the tap water without filtering it, no doubt about it, but in terms of freshness, it does leave something to be desired. And it's one of those things you might want to look at the sell-by date, and you'll probably laugh when you see it, because it'll be so far in the future, it's ridiculous. So always get the freshest bottled water you can possibly find. That's an important consideration. And that threw something else up. Yeah, right. You might have heard of another distinction: living water and dead water. And this is a bit of a strange one. When the water comes straight out of the spring, we classify it as dead water because it's not been exposed to light. As soon as the water's been exposed to light, it starts to become living water, because guess what? Yes, just as much as water can trap energy of love or hatred, of course it traps the light of the sun. So you're a light being. If you as a light being drink water which has been exposed to the light of the sun, can you imagine what good you're doing for yourself? Can you imagine what rejuvenation you're supplying to your body, to your emotions, to your mind, to your spirit? It just gets better and better, doesn't it? So living water. Make mine living water any day of the week.